episode of the season, and then they're coming back for another one. It's a disaster.
Welcome to the Failing Writers Podcast, sponsored by Scrivener.
A podcast that's always looking for real, tangible ways for us to improve our craft and to get our writing out there.
And a podcast that is here to support you, encourage you, and even sympathise with you about how writing can be a bit rubbish sometimes.
That's true. But, Tom, it's always worth it in the end, isn't it? Tom, I'm reaching out to you here for a little bit of affirmation, please.
Oh, I'm going to say it is. It is.
Okay,
I don't feel like
man.
I've reached the end at any point, but yeah, I guess it would be. If you could reach the end of it, I'm sure it would be worth it.
All right, great. Good to hear.
But anyway, let's crack on with this, the last episode of the season.
It is. Blimey, yeah. And before we do that, huge thanks to Scrivener for being by our side again all this season. Yeah, it really has made a huge difference to us and to us being able to keep the podcast going. So big shout out to Scrivener. Thank you.
And to remind you that if you go to literatureandlatte.com, you can get 20% off Scrivener by using the code FAILING.
Yeah, and we honestly do think it is the most all-round complete writing software out there. So that is our genuine recommendation, our seal of approval.
It is. So that said, it's time to move on to the final bit of our Edinburgh trip today, isn't it, John?
Yeah. Oh, and look at that. We've ended up in the pub.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't that
Great.
weird?
How did that happen?
The theme of the weekend continues.
We did. We met up with Doug Johnstone in the Holyrood 9A, which is a great little pub, by the way, up there in
This is
Edinburgh.
very nice. I had an excellent IPA.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you had a lager.
Less of the. This isn't like a beer podcast, is it? To critique the different ales of Edinburgh.
Well, that's true.
We should probably
That
talk
is
about
true.
Doug rather than the pub.
Although, idea for podcast, Tom, interviewing famous writers in pubs.
Yeah, writers in
That'd be quite
pubs.
good, wouldn't it? Publishing. Something. There's something there, I'm telling you.
Traditionally pubbed.
Anyway, yeah, so I discovered Doug a while ago. I've read quite a few of his books. He's been described in The Guardian by Craig Robertson as the best Scottish crime writer you've never read, except I have. But he's not just a crime writer, as you'll hear. But yeah, I thought, anyway, wouldn't it be great to abuse one of the benefits of hosting a podcast and set up a chat with him in person, seeing as he lives in Edinburgh?
So Doug has written 10 standalone novels, as well as the Skelfs series, which is a whodunit private investigators that run a funeral home, which actually makes sense later on when we talk to him. You'll see where that came from. And also his most recent series, the Enceladon trilogy, featuring a sort of alien octopus collective.
Which sounds very weird, but it's really good.
And overall, throughout all of that, I think it's fair to say it's obvious his writing is very heavily influenced by Scotland.
Also, we should probably say at this point that Doug isn't averse to dropping the occasional F-bomb.
Yeah.
And when I say occasional, what I actually mean is he swears like roughly one in like every 5 sentences.
In a nice way. He does it in a nice way.
Of course
though,
he
doesn't
does. Of course he
It
does.
is a nice way.
But if you are of a, delicate disposition, maybe you've never heard like standard Arbrothian vernacular. You might want to kind of steel yourself for some beautifully placed effery.
Yeah, you've got to lean into it, appreciate it for the art form that it is.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, so we started chatting with Doug about his background and his sort of way into writing. And it's interesting and I think encouraging for everyone out there. There's so many pathways to being a writer. And I think it's easy, especially when you're younger or you're coming through school, it's easy to think you have to be from an artistic background or later on, you've got to come from an artistic career. But that doesn't matter. That's what we found out because Doug started off as a scientist.
That always gets a laugh at book events when they read out my bio. He's got a PhD in nuclear physics. They're all like, what?
That's got to be quite unusual. Do you know anyone else who's ever gone through physics through writing?
There's a couple of other sciencey bods that are, it's a pretty small group, small but beautiful. It's a weird thing. I was kind of, at school I was writing stories, but I was also into physics and maths and I was quite good at that. And I thought, well, that's a living. Because at the time I didn't realise that you could write. Because every writer that I think had ever studied at school's dead, long dead, and had gone to Oxford or Cambridge 100 years before, so I didn't really think it was a thing. And so I was just writing stories for my own amusement. I mean, we had lots of books in the house. My dad had been an English teacher, so we had all sorts of stuff that I just read kind of voraciously across genres. But I just ended up going to university to study physics. And then, I mean, it's such a long story. It's going to be so boring. But I did that for a whole time. I was still writing stories at university. I don't think I did anything with them. None of my mates were really, none of them were writers. Certainly none of them were readers. So I was kind of just doing it for my own amusement.
So to be fair, we said that about, it's not a traditional writer's background, but there is a background there beyond the headline of him being a scientist engineer fellow, isn't there? Because his dad was an English teacher, and obviously he was a voracious reader. So that's...
Yeah, that's probably key, isn't it? Yeah, he's not come from nothing. But also, it's good that there are different routes to being a writer, isn't it? Because it does mean you get all kinds of different writers.
It does, that's true. And it rang a bell, this one. Autumn that we interviewed.
Oh, yeah.
5-6 episodes ago, maybe. She was an aerospace engineer,
Yeah,
wasn't
not
she?
too different, really. Maybe in a different timeline, she could have been working with him.
Yeah. From what he told us, he'd have been the grumpy one in the corner who didn't really like his job. That's
true.
That would have been the working relationship.
But at what point do you attempt your escape from a job like that? We asked Doug if there was a moment where he suddenly realised, writing, that's something that might actually pay the rent.
There's a few different things. I'm sure loads of other writers have said this, but it's about you read something that makes you think that you can do it, right? And there's a couple of things like The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, which came out in the mid-'80s. I was a teenager, and it was set in sort of small town East Coast Scotland, which is where I grew up, that part. And it was totally fucked up, which I loved. And it was about people, I'd recognised the way people were talking to each other in the pub and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then the obvious one for a lot of Scottish writers is Trainspotting. By that time, I was like in my early 20s living in Edinburgh. I thankfully wasn't addicted to heroin, but I was taking quite a lot of drugs at the time. And so I was kind of adjacent. And like the guy who got us our pills was a bit like Spud. And so I kind of, genuinely, Wee Scott, shout out Wee Scott. So I kind of like, I read that book and I was like, holy shit, this is like incredible. And so I was kind of that, I was writing stories still. And then after I graduated physics, I ended up getting a job as an engineer, which I absolutely hated. But I was also in bands, like I'm a drummer and guitarist. I was a drummer in bands at the time. And me and some mates started to do like a fanzine of like local Edinburgh bands. Just kind of our mates and other bands that we'd seen and stuff. And so I was writing some stuff and loving it. And then I started to get a few things published in like the local music press and like the local paper here in Edinburgh, which was incredible. And then I sort of foolishly thought, maybe I should just quit my high-paid graduate engineering job and become a music journalist. So that's what I did.
I mean, Doug talks about it there like it was nothing. He just sort of packed in his potentially lucrative and secure career in aerospace to go all in on the writing side of things.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
But you have to say, it does sound like once he'd taken the leap, he fully embraced it.
Definitely did.
I mean, I thought about it for a while, but I knew I was definitely going to do it because I hated the job I was doing. I loved the writing side of stuff. I was still writing fiction, but not really getting into it. But as soon as I did it, I was basically like busier than ever, like hustling for work. So I was freelance journalist, music journalist. That was back in the day when you could still just about scrape the equivalent of a student living from writing about bands and musicians. And I was just hustling for work, and I started to get a little bit more arts journalism work, and it was paying a little bit. Didn't have kids then, didn't have a mortgage, so it was like easier to fucking take that leap. And because I was writing for my day job, I just thought, I started to take my own fiction writing more seriously. Even though I was busier than ever, I was like, so I started a novel around about 2003. Again, didn't really know what I was doing, didn't know any other authors at that point, didn't know anything about it. There wasn't social media, so you couldn't stalk like agents and editors. Yeah. You had to buy the Writers and Artists Yearbook, the actual physical paper one, and flick through it going, like, who's the agent for Ian Banks? That was basically and so it was kind of a slow thing from there, but I was kind of so much happier that I'd never looked back. I was like, there's always like turning points in your life or whatever. But that's definitely one. Quitting that engineering job was just like the moment I realised I can't fucking do something like that. Mainly because I hate people. I can't be sitting in an office with them for like 9 to 5 days a week. It just did my head in. But yeah, so then I kind of started to take things more seriously. I mean, I kind of got very lucky in many respects as well, but that thing, I wasn't knackered, physically knackered from doing that job, but I was like emotionally drained because I just was so depressed about the whole thing because I was absolutely like freewheeling. I wasn't doing anything. And
then in this bit here, we'll save you the bother. Doug told us a bit about what his aerospace job was. Something to do with, I don't know, what was it?
Radar, was it, or something?
Yeah. I think even he was bored thinking about telling us about it. So Not something he felt like he was missing out on, I guess, in terms of career choice.
Yeah, we skipped that bit for you. But yeah, he seemed to perk right up when he told us about writing his first novel, weirdly, didn't he?
So I started, around 2003, I started writing a book called The Ossians, which was the first novel I wrote. It took me about a year, didn't know what I was doing, just sort of like fucking winging it. And then I did that thing of just going through the Writers and Artists Yearbook, emailing a bunch of agents and editors, actually, as well, directly, because I didn't know that you weren't supposed to just fire stuff in. You know, this was the day when it wasn't just emails, everything had to be submitted on paper. So you would send in the first 3 chapters, it's about 50 pages or whatever. So, I mean, my fucking post office bill was enormous. Yeah. Because you were constantly and then they would you put a stamped address envelope in so they'd send you it back. And I got nowhere with that. So I got rejected by everyone. About 50 agents, 30 publishers, something like that. I mean, I was going through the numbers. But weirdly, a couple of the editors who got it were very kind and said, "Look, I really like this. It's got potential. It's not really ready for us. You're not quite right yet. But if you're ever doing anything else, let me know." I mean, that was the kick up the arse I needed because I don't know if I would have given up, but I just was I had no idea if it was absolute shite or what I was doing. But I did have a kind of confidence in it, which was totally misplaced as it turns out because it was fucking terrible. But it was enough. I mean, you hear all these scare stories from editors and agents who get, emails from people who are just absolutely bullshit and like arrogant as fuck. And I wasn't doing that. I was just sort of saying, look, you're keeping it simple. Here's a few lines about me. Here's a little small paragraph about the book. Let me know what you think. And then that was it. But the 2 editors that came back, that was enough to sort of go, oh, well, maybe this isn't a total waste of time. So I started writing a second book. I guess we're now into 2005, I don't know, a couple of years' time. And I just sent them both a sort of draft of that, quite an advanced draft, and they both offered to publish it. No social media, so I also didn't realise that this was like a fucking lifelong dream for thousands of people. But it was, one of them was Serpent's Tail, and the other was a little-known outfit called Penguin, you might have heard of. I mean, it was just a case of landing on the right desk at the right time.
So at this point, Doug is just raw dogging it in the publishing world. Proper ignorance is bliss. He's just cracking on. He doesn't have an agent. He's just putting in the groundwork, just getting his stuff done and out there.
Actually, he mentions about getting an agent a little later on, doesn't he?
But he kind of did it backwards, didn't he? He got an agent after he got himself a publishing contract already.
Yeah, he did. I mean, to be fair to him, if you think about it, that's probably a good way to get yourself an agent, that, isn't it? Going in with an oven-ready deal.
Yeah,
you've done half their job for them.
It's interesting, throughout all this, he did what I think we probably wouldn't do, Tommy.
Be successful.
Not just that.
There was something else.
I was going to say, he seemed to have his feet planted firmly on the ground, not getting too carried away.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I definitely didn't think I'd done it. Let me put it this way. I'm not very self-aware. And at the time, I wasn't really thinking about the whole thing as a career or anything like that. I certainly wasn't expecting that this was going to be it, made. Apart from anything else, it was a very small advance from Penguin, very small. So even I knew at the back of my mind, well, this means it's not going to sell very much because they're not going to market it very much. So, I mean, but at the time I was making just about scraping a living journalism. So I kept doing that, full time. I'm basically writing in my spare time. And it was also quite a shell shock getting the first edits back because again, it was a paper thing. So I got it in the post and I opened the envelope and it's like my manuscript. And apart from the fact it stunk of fag smoke and it had red wine stains on it and cat paw prints. And like scribbles through every page, basically saying this is absolute drivel. And it was kind of shocking how terrible it was, but she'd still seen something in it. So that was Tombstoning, which was my first published novel. Then I went back to completely rewrite The Ossians from scratch, which I'd written before. Like genuinely from scratch, I just started again with the experience of having been edited and all the crap that shouldn't be in there and all the things that I could do differently. At the same time, I haven't really mentioned it. So I did get an agent, but it was very weird. Like, it wasn't an agent that I ever applied to, like, sent stuff off to. But there's a woman now I had to go with her because she's called Lucy Luck. But so she had been in touch with me in email correspondence because one of the editors I'd sent it to, he had basically said, oh, we can't publish it. You should maybe think about an agent because sending it out is going to get you fucking nowhere, basically. It's very true. And he said, well, I just happen to know this woman who's just started working at, it was Rogers, Coleridge and White at the time. She's looking for new writers. Would you be interested? So, but then by the time I got in touch with her, I sent her a list of who I'd sent it to because I'd already been sending it out to publishers. And she went, well, that's everyone I would have sent it to, so there's no point in me taking you on. And then when the second book came round, I sent it straight to the editors, the two editors, and they offered. And I went to Lucy and went, so I've got a book deal. Do you want to be my agent? And she was like, to be fair to her, she did say, well, you've done all the work.
Yes, please.
Yeah, but I can get the advance up and I can check the contract and stuff like that. So she became my agent for a couple of books, which was great, but then inevitably didn't work out because these things don't.
So that raises the question, when did he feel like his career had taken off? You know, that he'd made the big time.
Looks at watch. When's that going to happen? Yeah, it kind of, there's a couple of sides to that. Like, so in terms of literally how much I make from it, it has gradually just slowly gone up with the number of books I've written, with the backlist. But there's sort of some incredibly weird, like individual books do really well and other ones don't. And there's no fucking rhyme or reason to it that anyone can work out. It's an absolute crapshoot. Like, you know, so the first book sold a few thousand, which was great. And the next one sold a bit more. And then like Hit and Run, it got caught up in like the Amazon algorithms for the ebook back in the day when that actually meant something, and it sold 100,000 ebooks because it was quite big in the US as well. And then Gone Again, the book after that, sold like over 250,000 ebooks in a year. And I was like, holy shit. And then my next book sold 10,000.
Yeah, so as you can see, as John said before, he is very well grounded, is Doug. I mean, he's had success with his books that the likes of us could only dream of. And yet I think he's still dead realistic about it all being potentially quite sort of transient.
Yeah.
And it could easily just vanish at any moment.
It's quite a good way to be, really, isn't it? Even when you are selling over like 250,000 books at a time.
That is a lot, isn't it? That's
I mean,
big.
that is quite a lot of sales.
Yeah, that's big numbers.
Whoever you are in the industry, really. But then, right after that, just 10,000.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's the universe just saying, whoa, hold on a minute, sunshine. Don't get too big for your boots. Isn't it? It's just like a little reality check.
But it's like he said, he reckons that a good amount of his readership has come along with him, like crossing over genres and following his writing. But yeah, still, it doesn't matter who you are, does it? You're still a slave to the algorithm and to, you know, trends and things going viral and stuff.
I think that's it these days more than ever, isn't it? So you get mentioned on Richard and Judy's book club or whatever, or get a review in the paper, something blows up randomly on social media, and that can be just the catalyst for it, like, exploding and going massive.
Yeah. Although sometimes it's some really, really random stuff that can come along and help.
Well, I think actually, I mean, I'm sure this is only a small effect, but that novel Gone Again, when it came out, that was round about the same time as Gone Girl came out. And there definitely was a few, because I saw a few Amazon reviews saying, this is nothing like the movie.
I love that.
In fact, I forgot, because when I first submitted that book to Faber, it was called, my working title was called Washed Up, because it's about a body that washes up on the beach. And they went, no, we don't want that, because people will think you're all washed up or whatever. Like, have you got any other titles? So I sent them a list of 20 other titles that would be good, including Gone Girl, before Gone Girl came out. I've genuinely got the bit of paper with that printed on it.
So the next thing we wanted to ask Doug about was how he came to create the characters of the Skelfs. So if you haven't read the books, they are a family of women who are private investigators and funeral directors.
Yeah, which does make you wonder, where on earth did that idea come from?
I think you always, I mean, if you're a half-decent writer, you always want to challenge yourself, right? You're always doing something that you've not been doing before. And I'd written a whole bunch of standalone novels, which were different from each other, but I kind of just wanted to write something else. I was like good pals with a bunch of crime writers who had written successful series, and I was sort of picking their brains about it in the pub or whatever, saying like, I was sort of, isn't it just, don't you write the same book over and over again? They were like, no, it's fine, there's nuance, you can move things forward. I was like, okay, well, I'll think about it. And at the same time, so there's a couple of sort of inspirations for it. I'd had a note, like, on a bit of paper, because I'm just scribbling notes all the way through, thinking, I had this idea about a character called Jenny Skelf, who has to take over being a private investigator when her dad dies, and she doesn't know how to do it. And the reason for that was because I couldn't be asked to find out how to do it in real life. I couldn't be bothered researching it. So she she's learning on the job, then so am I. So, yeah, it's just buy a microphone and maybe like a tracking device. So I don't know, how do you do it? Google it. So that's exactly what. So I had that in my mind for years. And then I got this job as a writer in residence at a funeral director's. Any questions about that?
We did indeed have questions about that.
Yeah, I think our questions, quite fairly, were, how? And what?
So it literally was a job advertised in, like, it was the Creative Scotland website here, arts jobs. And they actually weren't looking for a writer specifically. It was like any kind of artist in residence. So I applied, and you kind of had to pitch what you would do. And I got an interview, so I had to go to the funeral directors in a suit and tie, and there was like the board members were interviewing me like a job interview. It was fucking really weird. Anyway, I got this. My pitch was like, I was actually using my journalism skills, not the fiction writing. So the idea was to try and give the staff there a bit of time to reflect on the job they do and the role it has in the community and how it affects their own attitudes to life and death and stuff. So what I did, I was there a couple of days a week for 6 months, and it's like quite a big, in Scotland and north of England, it's quite a big chain of like funeral directors. So I was going around all the different offices they had. I was interviewing as many staff as possible. I sort of job shadowed them all. So I helped to arrange funerals. I helped to carry out funerals, carry coffins. I sat in on embalmings and like cranial reconstruction. I went with the guys in the body van and helped to pick up the bodies from the morgue or the nursing homes. I had never seen a dead body before I started there, and I saw like half a dozen the first day. So you get used to it pretty quick. Actually, that was all absolutely fine. Dealing with the deceased was no problem. Dealing with the bereaved is actually really quite stressful, because if you imagine you're arranging a funeral with someone whose mum's just died that morning, it's like, fuck, and I'm sitting in the room going, Jesus, this is fucking horrible. And so the end product of that was a little non-fiction book which didn't get published widely. It's just the company kept it, which was basically reportage and interviews and stuff like that. And I think they still hand it out to new employees when they started the company.
I think I've got this lovely little image in my head that the leaflet is still getting handed out, but now it's probably on the front of it now. It's got one of those flashes in a big star on the front saying, "From the best-selling author of the Skelf series."
He perhaps didn't realise it at the time, but just like all as writers do, your life experiences are you're just sort of soaking everything up, aren't you, in the background?
Yeah.
So that you can draw on it all later, getting stored up for future writing.
But there was a running joke. I mean, I came away with a huge amount of respect for all the people who worked in that industry, because it's not, you have to have a certain temperament, I think, which I don't have. But there was a running joke, like they were sort of saying, "Oh, you'll get plenty of material for your books here, eh?" And I was like, well, not really, because like crime fiction, which is what I was writing at the time, all fiction thrives on conflict and tension, right? That's what makes it a story.
Yeah.
And what funeral directors do is like diffuse conflict and tension at an incredibly stressful time, for everyone. One of them said to me, it's like being like a wedding planner, but you have to do everything in a week and everyone's fucking miserable. I was like, okay, fine. So I loved the experience, but I didn't know how I could turn it, or if I should turn it into a book, or if it was going to be a book. But then one night I literally just thought, why don't I just pair it up with this private investigator thing? Like, what if they do both? So, on one of my favourite TV shows ever, 6 Feet Under. I don't know if you guys were ever fans, but it's partly because it's set in a funeral industry. It's infused with this sort of bittersweet melancholy about life and death. You're immediately like locked into big existential questions that you can write about, but also have a lot of fun and have like, and quite often, in my books, the private investigator cases come from, a dead body and something happen, in a funeral, someone will turn up, or there'll be mysteries left up in the paperwork after someone dies, or whatever it is, So the two it's not as crazy to think they might be interlinked. It's just, I don't think anyone's ever done it in real life.
I love the sort of creative thought process that goes into things like that, where you're just kind of wrestling with something, and then there's some part of your brain that just goes, well, just do them both, smash them together, and the other bit of your brain goes, oh yeah, why not? And it's something you've been thinking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. This completely insolvable conundrum, and the answer is just just do it. Why don't you just do it?
Glue,
All right, that's a good idea. I'll just do it. But you need that long time to actually for your brain to get on board. It's just weird.
And to convince yourself it's a good idea, I think.
Possibly, or maybe you are working out some little details as it goes along in your subconscious, but it's just a point where you suddenly go, well, this is a really obvious answer, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, and we did actually say that to Doug. But this next bit, I think, is really, really solid advice. It's pretty much non-negotiable, probably, when it comes to writing, especially if you want to actually enjoy writing and finish writing stuff that you're happy with.
And I think one of the things about that process is like you have to write what you're obsessed about, right? You kind of have to be super interested in what you're doing. Otherwise, if you're not interested, fucking the reader's not going to be, right? But also, it's like whenever I come up with an idea like that, I immediately think it's like Spielberg's going to be knocking down my door for it. Because it's like, this is the most obvious, commercial, insanely brilliant, popular idea in the planet. And of course it's not. Because then the next day I'll tell my agent and he'll be like, what? So, funeral directors and private investigators, 3 women, what the fuck what are you talking about? I was like, it'll work, because I'm like, I can see it. I can definitely see it. It's like, yeah, all right, get back to me when you've written it, sort of thing. So, but I think you have to have that. It's not confidence. It's just that kind of, I don't know if it's delusion or...
So, talking about pitching completely mental ideas, we had to ask about his latest series, in which these sort of multiple alien octopus creatures land in Scotland. And it's like, well, how do you pitch that? How are you selling that in?
Well, I didn't pitch it. I think I just wrote it. I've got a very understanding agent who I've never asked what he thinks of any idea, ever. Why the fuck would you ask him? Because he'll just fucking say no. And if he says yes, great. If he says no, then, I want to write it.
Which I guess sort of answers our next question about how do you manage not to get pigeonholed?
It does, but not quite as succinctly and beautifully as his actual answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you how I get away with it without getting pigeonholed. There's a secret to it. You just have to not give a fuck. It's just, I mean, it sounds simple, but it fucking really works.
Just don't give a fuck. I mean...
There you go. That should be the title of this episode, really, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for that, isn't there?
There is, but at the same time, I don't think it's as easy as it sounds, is it? It's on the face of it, it sounds like not giving a fuck. It's just doing nothing. But it's not actually doing nothing, is it?
No, it's quite a conscious decision, isn't it?
You've got to be swimming against the tide a bit, or refusing to be swept along a certain well-trodden path, or to ignore those voices, whether those are in your head or people outside saying, well, that's not how we do things, that's not the right way.
No, it takes a certain mental strength, doesn't it, actually?
Yeah.
But yeah, Doug went on to expand a bit about what not giving a fuck looks like in the real world.
There are obvious business and financial pressures, but you just can't let that stuff get in your head. Yeah. Even if, I just kind of always, I don't know what it is, it's maybe just naivety or whatever. I just think, well, I'll work out how to pay the mortgage somehow. It'll be all right. I mean, I guess after a long time of doing it and writing what is relatively non-straightforward stuff is that it does always work out. Like for example, so we haven't really talked about the Enceladus trilogy, which is this science fiction trilogy, which, I'll tell you how I did genuinely pitch it, just as an example to my agent. I said, look, it's basically E.T. meets Thelma and Louise, set in the Scottish Highlands. What's not to fucking love about that? Yeah. It's basically about a bunch of, there's 3 different humans who are kind of loners in their own worlds and not really connected to society. And they all get connected to this alien octopus from one of Saturn's moons, Enceladus. Yeah, and I was kind of obsessed, I still am obsessed with that idea of different kinds of consciousness. I'd read loads of books, like non-fiction books about animal behaviour and animal consciousness and all sorts of other stuff. And I'm super interested in nerdy sci-fi stuff and like SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence and all that stuff. So I kind of did, it was a joy to read books about that stuff and about where the most likely places might be for any kind of life in the solar system or out with the solar system. And then how might you think if you'd grown up in a small moon in an ocean that was entirely covered by ice and all that sort of stuff, how you might evolve, how evolution might run differently in a different scenario. So I was kind of super into all that stuff, which is quite nerdy. But then also, I can't help but write sort of thrillerish plots. So then you have to think, well, how do you turn all this highfalutin shite into books?
And then he went on to tell us about the series. So the first is a kind of road trip across Scotland. The second is a sort of kind of prison breakout story, again set in Scotland. And then the third is set in Greenland.
Which isn't in Scotland, surprisingly. I mean, that was a shock. But it's amazing, actually, what he was telling us about that although it was prohibitively expensive to actually go out there and do loads of holidaying or research, as he liked to call it, in Greenland.
On expenses. Mm.
Yeah, he's contacted Greenlandic. What's the...
Greenlandic? That sounds
Greenlandicans.
Right.
He's contacted a lot of Greenlandican influencers on Instagram and YouTube and what have you. And has actually been able to properly get a real authentic viewpoint into their lives.
Yeah. He tracked someone down from, was it Tassilac, where a lot of the book takes place, like a tracker and hunter guy. So if you're reading any accounts of skinning seals and what have you, you know it's going to be like properly spot on. That is how you skin a seal.
You'd be reading and going, oh yeah, that seems the right way to go about things. But the great thing about it, as much as it's got this alien, otherworldly thing going on in it, just like any book in any genre ever, it's all about the characters.
But yeah, the series is really taken off and folk love Sandy. Sandy's the name of the main octopus character in it. People give me cuddly octopus toys now at book events. It's fucking weird. But Sandy's sort of deliberately oblique. Like, I didn't want, like, the aliens to be totally understandable. Because that always fucking bugs me about big sci-fi movies, for example. Everyone knows what's going on, and they're basically humanoid with a bump on their head, like Star Trek style. Or they're here to either enslave us or destroy us or whatever. It's bullshit. What those stories really are like colonialist stories. Like the British Empire did this to indigenous people, so now let's fucking see what happens. That's what the War of the Worlds is, which is the kind of first time that was done. Which H.G. Wells said was actually influenced by the Tasmanian genocide of indigenous people there. So I wanted it to be much more strange. Like, how would we even know what, we can't even talk to dolphins on this planet. They're pretty smart. We're pretty smart. How the fuck can't we do that?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's because they don't want to.
What, the dolphins?
Yeah, I mean, why would you?
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
So we talked earlier about the building blocks for the Skelfs, and we wondered where on Earth, or not on Earth, John.
Oh, nice, Tommy.
Because of the alien connection. The ideas came from for this series.
I just genuinely was in love with those kind of like weird science fiction stories like E.T. that we kind of grew up on. So first contact stories, first contacts between humans and aliens, but not in a sort of adversarial, let's see what the government are going to do, like ordinary people. So in E.T. it's like a bunch of kids. Yeah. And like Close Encounters, it's like ordinary people are kind of drawn to this big mountain and it turns out the aliens are coming. And I'm really fascinated by that idea of ordinary people and what would happen if we had to then try and negotiate that whole thing. And then you have to think about, well, let's make it more dramatic, and then obviously the powers that be, like whatever it is, MI8 I call them in the book, I think. Well, I never say that explicitly, but or the government forces are, because this is potentially groundbreaking technology, that's usually a thing. So then they're chasing the whole thing. So then you've got a chase story, which makes it more repulsive. But yeah, at the heart of it was I wanted to write about ordinary people coming in contact with something completely alien, and it just kind of grew from there. And it's ordinary people, and it's places that I know, like the first book opens in Figget Park, which I can see from my house. Yeah. And it's like, it's people in the situations where people really are doing whatever it is they're doing.
And then finally, after all this chit-chat, maybe it was the fact we were sat in a pub having a few drinks, we finally got past the hard, impenetrable shell of Doug the Scientist and broke through to the soft, artsy-fartsy Doug lurking in there.
Every novel, without being too wanky about it, every novel is creating a dream, right? You're creating a dream in the reader's brain, right? You have to bringing them along for a ride. And if you ground the story in as much like veracity and detail and real stuff as possible, then you can do stuff like have an alien octopus from Enceladus and then all sorts of other stuff that builds on that. Because they're now in. They bought into it.
Oh, you asked a really good question next, John.
Did I? What?
You did, like a proper literary question.
Oh, that does sound like me, yeah.
I guess like a social science one too. You asked Doug about how he's so good at writing women.
Yeah, well, I think it's not always the case, is it, with male writers? Do you know what I mean? Especially when they are all the main characters.
Yeah, I think it's not just with men. I think that's something that can be hard for anyone writing about different genders so it's not just men writing about women. It could be women writing about men, people from different genders, races, cultures. It's kind of a bit of a minefield, isn't it? Because as a writer, you're trying to put yourself in the head of someone to write that character. But if you only know the stereotypes and are skimming over the surface,
yeah.
It's are you worry that you're relying on sort of innocent ignorance of it, or you're relying on those kind of stereotypes, and are they outdated? Or
you kind of need to know those kinds of people, don't you?
Yeah.
In the real world to a certain extent. But no, I think it's something that's really apparent in Doug's books, and I wondered if it was something he consciously did. Like he's almost trying to educate his male readers, do you know what I mean, and make them more empathetic with the world around them and the opposite sex. Because he does write women with real empathy and authenticity, I think.
Well, it's definitely not conscious. I don't sort of go, I'll need to write about women now. I remember I think it was, which book was it? It might have been, I can't remember now, The Deadbeat or something like that. One of my earlier standalones. I was sitting with a female friend of mine in the pub and I was telling her about the book and she went, well, that'll be interesting. I went, what do you mean? She's like, it's with the central character's a woman. That'll be interesting to see how that turns out. And I was like, I literally hadn't thought of that. I was like, well, it's just a person. Like, half the people on the planet are women, slightly more than half, but it's like half the people I know are women. My mum's a woman, my wife's a woman, my daughter's a young woman. It's like it's not like they're fucking octopuses from Enceladus. I guess I mean, the part of the reason, like, when you sort of frame that question, it's like, I was like, well, why doesn't everyone write with empathy and respect? But we've all read books where men don't write well about women. I mean, that's become a sort of, a mad cliche, like someone gazing at their own boobs boobily, bouncing boobily in the mirror. That sort of joke. But it's like, and we've all read that sort of thing, but I just think you just have to get in, the gender thing doesn't really come into it too much. And it just kind of, when I'm sort of thinking about characters, I will sort of scroll through in the early planning of how would the dynamic, it's usually dynamics, I think, more than individual characters. How would this be different if that was an older man, or if this was a younger woman, or what would that relationship be like? I mean, the Skelfs, for example, would be completely different if all three were men. A young man, a middle-aged man, and an older man. That would be a completely different dynamic. Or if I made one of them a man, it would also be a very different dynamic. And I found, as I've gone on, it's actually more helpful to think about the dynamics between characters rather than just individual characters. Like, how would it be for this woman if I'm writing a thing now, which is a young woman who's 20, who sort of ends up teaming up with this guy who's in his 50s, and that's inherently got a weird tension to it. It's not, they're not romantically involved, but it's like, well, is he just a mad perv catfishing me, or a father figure, or whatever's going on? So, but I'm using that, I think, from both of their points of view, because it's interesting. Like, whereas it would be more boring if they were just supportive women of each other. But you can also do that sort of thing if it's going to be, conducive to what you're writing about. I'm not some mad feminist. I'm just a feminist, like everyone on the planet should be. Yes. But I don't really. I try not to get too bogged into how people are going to think about it, like when they're reading it. A part of it is coming back to that not giving a fuck. I know some writers who will have think about the reader. I think that's death to me. I can't be writing thinking about what's the reader going to think of this. I think it's very easy to not think of that in a standalone, because the books, you're creating a whole new world and who cares. But I guess with the series it's a little bit different, because if you've written 6 books in the Skelf series, for example, there's obviously going to be, because you get feedback on all those 6 books.
And this leads us to something else that I always think is kind of fascinating when you're writing a popular series. There's a point somewhere in there when the balance of power almost shifts, and I'm sure it's something that the author maybe tries to ignore or possibly even rally against slightly, depending on their personality. But I think there's a point where the readership starts to be so heavily invested in the universe and the characters that they get really angry about things happening that they either don't want to happen or they don't think should happen in their perception of that universe.
Yes, the audience kind of feel like the characters belong to them and not the author.
Yeah, I guess they become real, don't they? And then, I mean, imagine for a second, I don't know if you can, but if I was a successful author, I mean, it sounds ridiculous saying that out loud, doesn't it?
I can imagine that, Tom.
Might have gone a step too far. But I think I would be so tempted to start messing around with stuff just to annoy people.
Would you, though? Would you be brave enough?
Well, maybe I'd bluff, killing off a main character and then go, no,
bring
not
him straight
really.
back in the next book.
Just desperately cling on to delivering what people wanted to keep the money coming in.
Well, let's ask Doug about it.
That's probably the best idea, because he's actually a successful author.
Yeah.
So,
It's a double-edged sword. Part of it is, you've created something that they're emotionally invested in. It's like, fuck, that's incredible. But at the same time, don't fucking tell me what to do with these. Yeah, but I get it. I get why people could be upset. And I probably do think slightly differently about the Skelfs women now to at the start, before there was less at stake. I genuinely have some early notes about, book 2 or something. I was like, well, maybe I'll kill off Dorothy, one of the 3 main characters. And I definitely wouldn't be doing that now, although you never know. And they're also, they're aging in real time. She started off as 70 years old in the first book, so she's now in her mid to late 70s. So if this goes on, then,
Inevitable.
And it's a series about the funeral industry.
Yeah. There's a link somewhere. There's definitely something.
Maybe some future possible spoilers in there, some hints about what might happen.
I mean, I did suggest to him that maybe an alien octopus should burst out one of the funeral home coffins. I thought that might work well.
You actually did do that. Bit of cross-pollination. That's nice.
Why not? I mean, that's good marketing.
Yeah.
That's marketing 101, isn't it?
Clever.
Foolishly, I said Doug could have that one for free. So when that comes out in a couple of years, and then it's a massive best-selling hit, and there's Netflix series and everything, I won't be seeing a penny from that, John.
Oh, mate. Bit hasty there, Tommy.
Yeah.
Didn't think that through. So we were getting towards the end of our time with Doug, but before we let him go, we wanted to see whether he had any really great tips for us, because as well as being a brilliant writer, he's also done a bit of creative writing tutelage too.
So he must have some insight into how to become a better writer.
You'd think so. Although I reckon he's covered an awful lot of that in his just don't give a fuck comments earlier, to be honest.
Quite possibly.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, but having sat and had a pint with him, we knew there would be a few more gems in there.
In terms of I don't have a regular job as a creative writing tutor now. I've done it in the past at universities and I do it at festivals and stuff like that. I tend to not do it so much now if I can help it, because I find it quite stressful, because I just think that I don't know a fucking thing about it. And it feels disingenuous to stand up in a room and say, here's how to write a book, because that's fucking ridiculous. But I do other jobs. I work for the literary consultancy. I'm one of the manuscript assessors for them, and I do mentoring for them as well, right? So I get sort of stuff coming across my desk, and there's a very low percentage of it that is going to be publishable, probably, you would think, in terms of the traditional marketplace, whatever. But I think there's a couple of things, everybody overwrites all the time, in every single aspect. I do it in first drafts as well, but I mean, if anyone who's read any of my books, they're incredibly lean. I don't fuck around. I just and it's, part of it is I love the editing process. The first drafts of my books are about 100,000 words. The second drafts are about 70,000. It can be less. My average book length is less than that, 60,000, 70,000 words. They're pretty short. Some of my early standalones were under 60, 55,000, one of the Faber books was, which probably wouldn't get published in one of the big five. They would literally look, and I remember when I sent the first science fiction book out on submission, quite a lot of the feedback was, it's just too short. It was 70,000 words or 67 or something. And they were like, we need another 20,000 words of world building. I was like, no, you don't. That would wreck it. Why are you talking about? But that was genuinely, because that's the kind of thing that people expect in the genre, in the mainstream of a genre. That's never been my thing. So I think you have to really get into the mindset of words are the enemy. Basically, words are bullshit. The fewer you can use, the better. If you can just cut them all out, cut them all out.
So, write a book with no words. Okay, I've got that right. I think that's...
It might actually be better for some of us.
It could be. That could be the massive improvement we've been looking for our writing.
Less words, to the extent there are none. But yeah, there pretty much isn't anything written by anyone that wouldn't benefit from a proper, good, thorough trimming, I reckon.
Well, I think that's pretty much universally true, though, isn't it?
Yeah. But different writers will all have their own different Achilles heels, won't they?
Yeah.
So we asked Doug what he thought his was.
Oh, it's what I call dead language. It's just waffle. So it's stuff that's repetitive, loads of internal monologue, almost everything where I'm telling the reader what someone's thinking. I just cut it. Here's how he did this thing. No, just tell him he did it, and it should imply from the context why he's doing it. Otherwise, there is internal monologues. I guess it's useful in the first draft because I'm just splurging it out. So I to sort of think, well, this is what the character's thinking. But then most of that stuff can just get wiped. Be merciless with the dialogue. People always talk too much at the start of conversations and at the end. Just, you can get rid of the start and the end of every conversation. You should be coming in at the middle of every conversation, basically, and leaving before anyone gets bored.
Good tips.
Great tips.
The other thing we were curious to know before our Doug time was up was something we'd sort of touched on at the start, but just to expand on a bit further, was whether he felt that he had managed to bring a lot of his readers with him.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because when you've got yourself set up in a genre, it's got to be tempting just to carry on down that road with your guaranteed audience.
Well, you say that, but he's like he said earlier, that he doesn't feel that is guaranteed, that no matter how big you are, you kind of at that whim of the algorithm and trends or social media or whatever.
Yeah, true.
So, not guaranteed. Our question to Doug was, did he think he brought a lot of his audience from the Skelf series with him to the Enceladon books?
Yeah, actually, anecdotally, a whole lot of folk. There was a couple of things that went really well for the space between us, which is the first in that trilogy. Firstly, it was on Between the Covers, which, on BBC Two with Sarah Cox, that show there, which was unbelievable. But it was that got recommended by one of the people who sort of work in their team. But when it was on Between the Covers, Sarah Cox said, I don't normally read science fiction, but this was really good. And then every single other person said, they all said, every single one of them said, yeah, I don't normally read science fiction, but this was really good. And I was like, fucking hell, this is great. So it's a gateway drug. And people genuinely say to me at book events, I'm doing a book event for the Skelfs, and they'll come and say, Oh yeah, I don't really do science fiction. I'll say, well, it's funny you should say that, because a whole bunch of folk on the telly just said, this is exactly the book for you. So I think a lot of folk will come over, a lot of the Skelfs readers, certainly the sort of feedback I get on socials and like emails and stuff. A lot of folk have never read science fiction, but are kind of coming to it. I think I've never understood this genre. I genuinely, that sounds like I'm bullshitting, but I genuinely don't understand it. I don't know what it means. When I was reading books as a kid, I didn't know what genre was. I would read Lord of the Rings, I would read Macbeth, because my dad had lots of like Shakespeare stuff in the house. I would read poetry, I would read like sci-fi, I would read non-fiction, I would read, literary fiction. Anything that was lying around that had an interesting cover and a blurb, I would go, all right, I'll give that a go. So I just don't understand it, and I've never been the kind of reader that sticks to one genre, and I don't understand that mindset at all. And all my favourite writers are writers that kind of jump around between stuff, that are more eclectic and challenging themselves with new stuff all the time. And I know that everyone has a kind of thing where they get a comfort read, right? And I don't really have that. I mean, my most comfortable read would be a writer that I really like writing something totally different. I mean, for a long time, I was kind of classified as a crime writer, and it's great to be part of that community. It's an incredible community, very supportive. But I never really thought of myself as a crime writer particularly, and I certainly don't write down to me. I've never written police procedural stuff. All the standalones were kind of around the edges. Like a book like Breakers is about a bunch of burglars breaking into posh houses in Edinburgh and getting fucked up.
I mean, he said it over and over again here in so many different ways, but Doug Johnstone is a massive advocate of following your instincts and just sticking to what you think is best.
The art of not giving a fuck.
Yes, I guess it is in a nutshell, isn't it? That balance between listening to feedback, taking stock of what's going on around you, but at the same time, sticking to your guns and your kind of your gut instinct and writing from your heart.
Simple as that. Don't know what all the fuss is about.
Yeah,
writing.
I mean, just do that.
Dead easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should just end the podcast season right here, shouldn't we? That's it. Done.
Yeah, I mean, it is admittedly easier to say when you've already established yourself, but in fairness to
Yeah,
Doug,
that's true.
It's fair to Doug. He's been doing it. That's been his methodology for years, by the sound of it.
Yeah.
So even in his early career,
Yeah.
when nothing was certain, he was
That is true.
talking the talk, walking the walk.
Yeah. So with that in mind, the last thing we wanted to know was what's next? Would it be something crazy, another massive genre detour, or returning back to some of his much-loved series?
No, yeah, I'm working. Weirdly, this is the first time I've done this. I'm actually working on 2 books at the same time, just because I don't know, my schedule didn't work out. So I'm writing the next Skelfs book. So that's going to be delivered in February. I'm really enjoying that, because I've actually written a couple of other books in between. So it's nice being back in that world. At the same time, I'm writing a standalone novel, which is like a thriller, but also maybe fantasy, urban fantasies, science fiction-y. Yeah, it's something completely different. So my pitch to myself is, it's Cloud Atlas meets Gone Girl. So the central story, I was very quiet about this for a while because it's so embarrassing to talk about something that you're still writing, I think, especially something's weird. But then I got drunk at a party and was shooting my mouth off to a bunch of writers, so they know about it now, and everyone was like, I can't wait for this stupid book you're writing. So it's called The Seven Hills. It's basically a thriller set in contemporary Edinburgh about a young woman whose sister goes missing. But at the same time, the 7 hills of Edinburgh are characters in the book. So they're like a Greek chorus. So they're kind of coming and going into the story and observing what's going on and sometimes intervening. And also they're giving the main character hears voices. Like she's heard voices all her whole life in her head. So she's hearing them sometimes. And they're also giving her visions that span 680 million years. So the book starts 340 million years in the past with Arthur's Seat erupting as a volcano. And it ends 340 million years in the future. It's just another police procedural, basically.
Yeah, just sounds amazing.
So, well, I mean, I just need to fucking pull it off now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm close to giving it to. This again, told my agent about it, and he was like, "Fuck's sake."
You can just see his face.
Yeah, down the phone, I could just imagine him just holding his fucking face, going, "Oh my god." So I'll be finished it in like a few weeks. Send it to him. So I'll wait and see what he thinks. But it's actually, I don't know what it is. It might be terrible. Who knows?
And that was the end of a lovely, lovely hour in the Holyrood 9A pub with Doug Johnstone.
And that is also, sadly, the end of the series.
It is. So we hope you have a lovely festive season, people.
Yeah, and thank you so much for listening and joining us on our journey. It would be a very lonely one without you. And yeah, we do honestly, genuinely appreciate it.
And I think it's been a good season, hasn't it, really? Through what's been, for me personally, quite a tricky year.
Yeah. No, it has. It's been cracking. It's been an award-winning season, Tommy.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
Oh, that was nice. That was a nice bit of that.
Oh, it was nice.
Multi-award winning. Did you say multi then or not? I don't know if you did.
I did. I missed the
Right,
multi
doesn't matter.
bit.
It's fine. It's fine. We don't like to
Multi-award
go on about it. That's the thing, isn't it? That's the modesty shines through.
What else? Yes, yet again, we've had the privilege of talking to some bloody amazing people.
We have. What a cast of people we've had on this season. And obviously that's given us the opportunity to write silly songs about them too, which is
That's also true.
the main thing.
Yeah, and all the stuff our listeners have sent in too. That's been brilliant. All the entries to the competition and all the fantastic pieces for Hype Writer.
Yeah, actually, before we go, we should say it. Don't forget, if you've got some writing that you'd like to be hyped in the Hype Writer, so it can be maybe the opening of your book, or get a bit of free publicity for that, or some flash that you've written that did or didn't make it in a competition, or some poetry, an extract from a story on your Substack, anything like that. And even better if there's a little story behind it about why it never got read or how well it did or anything like that. We love that.
Opportunity to be hyped. Come on, people, send it over. But yeah, you could send just the text, or if you want to send us an audio file of you reading it, that's also fine. And yeah, you could be starring in next season's Hype Writer. What else has gone on this season, Tom?
Oh, I'll tell you what we should mention. What's been lovely this season, quite a few folk giving us an actual mention in their books that they've published.
Oh, yeah.
Or asking us for a comment for the cover or something. Bit of a privilege that, isn't it? Feel a bit, why are you asking us?
Yeah,
wow.
Ridiculous privilege. Yeah, big shout out especially to Genevieve Merengue, who wrote us a lovely acknowledgement in the back of her brilliant book, No Oil Painting, that I read and I really enjoyed and I recommend. So well done, Genevieve.
Yeah, and we should, before we go, give one last enormous stereophonic in Technicolor thank you to Scrivener.
Thank you, Scrivener. And also a big old Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
Oh, and do you know what? I was thinking about Happy New Year the other day, and I was thinking, because we were talking in last episode about the most quoted poem, I was thinking, it's Auld Lang Syne, isn't it?
Could be.
Another Robbie Burns.
Does it count if it gets sung, though?
I think it still counts.
Counts if it's sung. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, I'm counting it.
Okay.
Right, we'll see you back here after a bit of a writing break, or in my case, a bit of writing and mildly terrifying theatre performance break.
Terrifying for you or the audience, John?
A little bit of both.
We look forward to that. It's going to be the end of January, so perfect timing for us to pull an episode together for next season to say how well it went.
Oh, goody.
So see you all next time for Season 6 of the Failing Writers Podcast.
See you soon, folks.
Bye.
I know we leave you with a broken heart, but try not to cry, 'cause we'll be back before you know it, with more authors, scribes, and poets. So this is not goodbye, so much is seen very soon, with chats and facts and little tunes like this one here. Oh God, we hear you croon.
Hello?
Where's everybody gone?